Hi, good morning. My name is Hana Qistina, and you can call me Hana. Okay. And I am from KPM Sri Iskandar, Malaysia. And I am currently pursuing a diploma in English communication. And this interview is conducted as part of my assignment on the varieties of English communication. And I am truly appreciate your time and insights today. So, the first thing, can you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Oh, of course. Hi, my name is Isaac. I'm from Barcelona, Spain. Currently, I'm studying at the university. I'm 21, and I'm studying physics.
Oh, nice. Okay. To begin with, can you share how English first came to your country?
Oh, well, we have a long history with the Brits, since, well, we are not that far away from them. We always have commerce and wars mostly with them. So, English has always been there. But it wasn't until the late 90s when English became the global language to commerce and stuff that it started to be taught in school. Before that, French was a language.
Okay, so moving on, how did English develop over time in your country? And how would you describe its current status?
Well, since it's been not that long since it was started like an official thing here, it doesn't change that much. Only younger generations speak it, so we more or less follow the same trends
Yeah.
that come to us from the States.
Yeah, okay. So, considering its presence today, what is your reaction to English in your country? Like, would you say it has a positive or negative influence to you?
Well, I think it's a little bit dangerous
I,
because, well, young people tend to use a lot of English words
mm-hmm.
to say things that already exist in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sometimes it's nice because English has more words than Spanish, so you can say more specific things.
Yeah.
But it's, I feel like we're losing our own language,
Mm-hmm.
and the Spanish also reflects how we are as a
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Speaking on its influence, what is your opinion on English overpowering your native language?
Well, it's scary. It's scary. I think Spanish is a very beautiful language speaking in a lot of countries. So
Yeah.
I would like it to lose it.
Okay. Okay, now let's talk about the vocabulary differences. Okay, so I want to
Hmm.
know, how do people in your country refer to certain words? For example, in the UK, biscuits means cookie, and as for crisps means chips, and flat means apartment. So, are there similar variations in your country?
Um, well, not no. We use more or less the same that in the States more than in the UK.
Oh, I see.
Although in schools we are taught the British
Mm-hmm.
accent, but with all the globalization of the American culture, we tend to use uh, cookies, chips,
All right.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, on a related note, how does English vocabulary in your country differ from that of native English speaking countries like the UK?
Uh, we don't change it. We only pronounce it the Spanish way. We just read it as we would read it in Spanish. For example, instead of saying that, oh, this is super aesthetic, when something is cool, and we say, oh, this is super aesthetic,
Okay.
like literally writing with our own rules, or the word literally. Instead to say literally, we say literally.
That sounds so fancy. Okay. And into the last question, are there any unique English words or phrases commonly used in your country that you would like to share?
Well, there's a really funny one to the sport, jogging. When you go like running and that stuff. We thought that word didn't capture well enough what it was. So we invented a new one that was putting, like food, but making it a verb. So we say, I go footing instead of jogging.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. And we're at the last minute of our interview, and thank you so much for be part of my interview session. Thank you so much, Isaac. Thank
It's really
you.
my pleasure.
Hello everyone. Today I will talk about my interview with someone from Spain named Isaac about how English is used in his country. He shared interesting thoughts about its history, how people use it, and also its effect on their native language. So let's go through his answers and what they mean. So the first one goes to history of English in Spain. First, he said that English has been in his country for a long time because of history with the British, especially in trade and war. But English only became common in schools in the late 90s when it became the main language for business. Before that, people learned French instead. This shows that English became important because of globalization. Next, he explained that since English is still new as a spoken language in his country, it hasn't changed much. Mostly young people use it, and they follow trends from the United States. This means that English in his country is still growing and influenced by other countries. So, is English a good or a bad influence? Talking about its effect, he said English is useful but also a little dangerous. Many young people use English words instead of Spanish words, which makes them forget their own language. However, he also said that English has many words that Spanish doesn't have, so sometimes it's helpful. This shows that English has both good and bad effects. Now we are going to touch about the effect on Spanish. He is worried that if people stop using Spanish, they might lose their culture. He said that Spanish is special because it reflects their way of life. If the language disappears, people might forget their roots, and this shows how important language is to identify. Let's talk about different words. He gave examples of how some words in his country are different from English. For example, like galeta means cookie, patatas means chips, where piso means apartment, marmalada means jelly, and camion means truck. And this shows how languages have their own unique words. Not just that, he also said that when they use English words, they pronounce them in a Spanish way. For example, they say aesthetic and literally differently, making them sound more natural in Spanish. And this happens in many countries when people borrow words from other languages. Lastly, he shared a funny example. Instead of saying jogging, people in his country say footing because it sounds more English to them. This shows how languages change in creative ways. English started spreading through historical trade and war, but it became essential in the late 90s due to globalization. Spain needed English to connect with international markets, and it became a key part of the education system. Now, younger generations are using English more, influenced by media, social platforms, and job opportunities. Many see it as an important skill for career growth and travel. Because of this, English is now a lingua franca, a common language for communication. Business and tourism play big roles in this. Many international companies require English, and Spain's tourism industry depends on it. Universities also offer courses in English to attract global students. However, some worry about English overshadowing Spanish and regional languages. So, in conclusion, English is now a key language in Spain, bringing opportunities but also challenges. For conclusion, my interviewee's answers show that English is becoming more common in his country, but people worry about losing Spanish. So it is important to find a balance between using English and keeping the native language alive. So thank you for listening.
Hi, Marie. I'm really delighted to finally have this interview with you. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Before we got into the questions, could you briefly introduce yourself, just a little about who you are, where you're from, and anything that you like to share?
Of course. So I'm currently 23 years old. I am from the country of Austria. I live in Vienna. I also study here at the University of Vienna. I'm in my hopefully last semester of sinology. That's Chinese studies. So I'm majoring in Chinese studies with culture, language, and history, politics, economics, and I have a minor in econ and finance. Yeah, I'm very excited to start this interview. English is not my first language, so I would like to get that out of the way. Our native tongue in Austria is German, but I would still say that my English is passable enough to conduct this interview.
Okay, very great. So let's start with the first questions. So, how did English first come to your country?
So since Austria is in Europe, we're a very Central European country, we do not have a history of colonization or anything like that. So I would say that our history with English is more fluent. It's hard to say an exact date when it came, but I would say that German and English evolved side by side because English has a lot of Germanic elements in it. So there's no exact date, but we share a history, and English shares certain factors and parts of German.
Okay, good. So moving on to the next questions. How did English develop over time in your country, and how is it now?
Previously, it was more reserved for people of higher education or of royalty, for example, like 100 years ago. Nowadays, it's very common for us to know it. Up to 40% of the country is able to speak English to various levels of proficiency. So yeah, I would say that we became a lot more fluent within the past 30 years, or after World War II, definitely. Especially with the introduction of public education becoming more affordable and more mandatory, it became more widely accessible, as well as spoken.
Okay, let's moving on to the third question. So, what is your reaction in the presence of English in your country? Do you see it as a positive or a negative influence?
I would say both, actually. I would say, on one hand, is a positive development that our country is getting more educated. People are able to speak more languages. We are able to have more opportunities. Our children are more proficient in various languages. But on the other hand, I also think it's a bit sad because young people sort of grow up bilingual in that sense, because we have a lot of exposure online from the English language. We have a lot of like American TV shows or English BBC, English music, all that stuff. So all the kids these days forget certain German words and then they just replace them with English, and this sub language just emerges right now, and it's very interesting to see on one hand, but on the other hand, it's a bit scary because these kids are going to grow up, and if this behavior is not corrected at a young age, it will continue throughout adulthood, and it's going to be very interesting to see in 10, 15 years from now on how this develops.
Yeah, actually, kids in Malaysia turned out to be that way too,
Yeah.
you know,
Really?
because of the internet right now, social media right now. Yeah. Let's moving on to question number 4. So, what is your opinion about English overpowering your native language?
I wouldn't say that it is per se overpowering my native language, because we do speak German in my country, but I would say that it's starting to get more normalized to speak in chunks of English, which is a development that I don't like to see, because we have our native tongue, and we have that for a reason. And English is fine and all that, and I do love the language. I love speaking it. I love interacting in it. Reading, it's very handy. It's extremely important these days. But I also think that it's important for us to preserve our native tongues and native languages, while being able to speak in different languages as well.
I get it. So, question number 5. How do people in your country call these words? For example, in UK, people would pronounce biscuits as cookie, right? Crisps as chips, flat as apartment, jam as jelly, lorry as truck.
Well, obviously, since we have our own native tongue, we would use our own words for it. For example, for cookie or biscuit, we have the word cakes. Cakes, yeah.
Cake.
What else? Crisps or chips. We actually use the American word for chips. We don't really
Chips.
have our
Oh.
own words, our own word for it because it's not very common for us. Flat or apartment, bono. It derives from the word to live in our
Oh,
town.
what is it again?
Bono.
Bono?
Yeah, you're really good actually. Wait. Jam or jelly. We don't use either of those. We call it marmalade. Marmelada.
Marmalade.
Yeah,
What does it
marmelada.
mean though?
It means the same thing. It's jam, jelly, preserve. It's fruit with
Ah,
sugar. It's just the preserve. We call it
right,
marmalade or marmelada.
right.
Lorry or truck. Lastwagen.
Oh my God, I don't think I can pronounce that. What is
Last
it again?
Lastwagen.
Last Vargo?
Lastwagen.
Last bargain?
Yeah, perfect. You're doing so great.
Love. All
Mhm.
right, so let's moving on to the next question. Question number 6. How
Yeah.
does the English vocabulary in your country differ from the origin country of native English speakers?
Um, I would say, especially with the examples that you have provided in the past question, like biscuit, cookie, crisp, chips. It depends on two things. Schools here usually tend to teach British English since we're geographically a bit closer, but a lot of schools are also opting out of it and go straight for American English because people are more exposed to it online or by TV shows, stuff like that. So I would say, on one hand, it comes down to what your school taught you, and on the other hand, it comes down to what you teach yourself in your free time.
Ah,
So if you are learning British English in school, biscuit, lorry, all that stuff. Great, lovely. But then you spend your entire free time on like the American side of TikTok or Facebook, and you watch exclusively American YouTubers. You're gonna end up like me with an American accent and more American words.
right.
So it depends on these two things: what you're taught in school and what you teach yourself.
Okay. So let's moving on to the last questions. What are some unique English words or phrases that are commonly used in your country?
Commonly used in my country. Um, I wouldn't say we use a whole lot of words per se. We have these lending words, for example, like chips or outfit, stuff like that. Podcast, for example, things that we do not have in our native tongue, we borrow from English. For example, a lot of languages do that. However, we don't do that exclusively with English. Previously, it used to be French, for example, or we also have Italian, where it's just like English is borrowing from other languages such as German, French, Italian.
Right.
It's a very similar process. However, one thing that I would say is rather unique is that we go ahead and we take idioms or phrases that are more euphemisms or, yeah, more idiomatic. We translate them into English as a joke.
Oh, I
Everyone knows
get
what
it.
it means, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense unless you know the phrase in
Right.
the pure ground form. For example, we have one saying, something da 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 is not the yellow from the egg, the yolk.
Yeah.
We're referencing the yolk because it's the best part in the egg. It tastes the best. It's creamy, smooth, has a lot of nutrition. So if something is the yellow from the egg, the yolk, it's great. It's the best. Um,
Ah, I get it.
that's like the essence of the phrase.
Right.
And a very very common joke is, oh yeah, my English is not the yellow from the egg. My English is not the best. My English is not the greatest. So we take these
Right.
idiomatic phrases such as the yellow from the egg, and we translate it into English because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's just funny for us because we know what it means. But we also know it doesn't make sense to like a native English speaker. So yeah.
Right. Okay, I get it right now. So, that's all the questions that I really have to ask you. So, thank
Great.
you so much, Marie, for joining this interview.
Of
And
course.
yeah, I have a lot of fun.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Bye,
Of course.
Marie.
Hello everyone. In this interview, I spoke with Mary Hartler, a 23-year-old university student from Austria.
She currently studies at the University of Vienna, majoring in Chinese studies with a minor economics and finance. Mary is multilingual, speaking German, English, French, Latin, Spanish, and Chinese, although German is her native language. Despite English not being her first language, she is confident in using it for conversation and academic purposes. Through this interview, Mary shared valuable insights about the role of English in Austria and how it impacts her life and society. For the first questions that I have asked her, how did English first come to her country? Mary shared that Austria, unlike many countries, has no colonial history with English. She mentioned that English and German evolved side by side due to their shared Germanic roots. This reflects how Austria is part of the expanding circle where English spread through cultural and economic influences then colonizations. For the second questions, how did English develop over time in her country and how is it now? So, for this question, Mary explained that in the past, English was mainly spoken by the educated and royalty. However, after World War II, public education made English more accessible, and now about 40% of Austrians speak English. This highlights how historical events and the education system have played a major role in spreading English. For the first questions that I have asked her, how did English first come to her country? Mary shared that Austria, unlike many countries, has no colonial history with English. She mentioned that English and German evolved side by side due to their shared Germanic roots. This reflects how Austria is part of the expanding circle where English spread through cultural and economic influences then colonizations. For the second questions, how did English develop over time in her country and how is it now? So, for this question, Mary explained that in the past, English was mainly spoken by the educated and royalty. However, after World War II, let's moving on to the third questions. What is her reaction to the presence of English in her country? Is it either positive or a negative influence? So Mary sees both sides. She likes that more people are bilingual, which brings educational and career opportunities. However, she is concerned that young people mix English with German too much, losing some native vocabulary. This is an example of language shift, where a dominant language like English affects native language use. Now, for the fourth question, what is her opinion about English overpowering her native language? For this question, Mary said that she feels that although German remains the main language, using English phrases is becoming normal. She believes preserving German is important while still using English for global communication. This shows her awareness of language preservation and linguistic identity. Moving on to the fifth question, how do people in her country call these words? For example, in UK they call biscuits, in US they call cookie, in UK they call crisps, in US they call chips, and so on. So for this question, Mary shared examples of Austrian German words such as cakes for cookie, Warner for apartment, marmalade for jam, and Lastwagen for truck. These show how Austria retained its native vocabulary but also adopts some American English terms like chips. This is an example of linguistic borrowing. For the sixth question, how does the vocabulary in her country differ from the native English speakers? So, Mary explained that Austrian schools mainly teach British English, but social media and pop culture expose people to American English. As a result, many young Austrians speak with American accent or vocabulary. This shows how globalization and media influence shape language preferences. Now, for the last question, what are some unique English words or phrases commonly used in her country? So, for this question, Mary shared that Austrians often borrow words like chips or broadcast from English. Interestingly, they also translate German idioms directly into English for humor, such as it's not the yellow from the egg, meaning it's not the best. This is an example of cult, where idioms are translated word for word from one language to another. Here are the reasons on how the English language spread in Austria. First, education plays a key role. English is mandatory subject in Austrian schools, starting from a young age. Many universities also offer courses in English, making it essential for students who wish to pursue higher education. Second, tourism and business drive the use of English. Austria, known for cities like Vienna and Salzburg, attracts millions of international tourists. In the hospitality and business sectors, English is commonly used to communicate with visitors and global partners. Next, media and entertainment expose many Austrians to English. Popular movies, TV shows, and music in English are widely enjoyed. Many people prefer watching with subtitles rather than dubbing, which help them learn and practice the language. Lastly, globalization and employment increase the demand for English. Austrian companies that operate internationally require their employees to be fluent in English. This has made English an important skill in the job market, especially in global industries. In Austria, English plays an important role as a lingua franca, helping people from different backgrounds communicate easily. It is especially important in tourism and business as Austria is a popular destination for international travelers and a hub for global companies. Many professionals use English to connect with clients and partners from around the world. Additionally, English is widely used in higher education, with many universities offering courses and entire programs in English. This attracts international students and allows local students to study and work abroad more easily. Overall, English as a lingua franca connects Austria with the global community, supporting both education and the economy.
Okay, good evening. Let me introduce myself. My name is Qaisara Iman binti Syahrizal, and you can call me Sarah. I am 20 years old and I am a student from College Professional Mara Sri Iskandar, a college in Malaysia. So today I am going to conduct an interview about a project in my subject Varieties of English Language. So will you mind introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So let me introduce myself. So my name is Iswara Alyaa, but you can call me Rara or Ayu in internet. And I'm 23 years old and now working as a private tutor in here.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ayu. Kak Ayu. Okay. So for the first question, let me ask, how did English first come to your country?
Okay, so for the first question is how English first come in my country, in Indonesia here. It's actually from English come here is through the how to call it, through the colonization. Even though Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch, but still English is mainly used for the trade, the for the international trade of course, and for the missionaries, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And later, after the World War Two, yes, World War Two, when British and American influence increased, I mean, their influence a lot in Indonesia, the English became more widely used in education, business, and also due to the globalization itself.
Oh, now I know. Okay, so for the second question, how did English develop over time in your country and how is it now?
Over time, English has become more integrated into Indonesian society right now, I mean, and it was initially used in formal education and business, but over time, like right now, like the rise of the internet and
Mhm.
and because of that, English more used in a daily life, and it becomes a part of everyday life, and especially in a school, in a international school, of course, they use English as the language of teach. How to say that? Like, I mean, many schools, especially international schools, they use English for teaching, like that.
Oh, okay. I
And
understand.
also, yeah, and
Uh,
also the social media. There's a lot of Indonesians who use English today.
yes, okay. So for the third question, what is your reaction to the presence of English in your country? Do you see it as a positive or a negative influence?
For that, um, in my opinion, for me, I saw a lot of positive side. I mean, I do support someone whenever they want to learn English. Like the person of English itself have the pro and contra, of course. I mean, it's not contra. It's like the negative side from the people itself. For example, on the positive side, first, English is like um how to say that. In the positive side, of course, we as Indonesian have a lot of opportunity working in international field,
Uh-uh. Okay.
right? You know what I mean? You get it?
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
Okay, ano pala tadi? For example, in business or in a better education, something like that. But in the negative side, I think it's more like whenever someone who try to speak in English for daily life conversation, they must face a lot of kind of bullying itself because of they try to speak in English.
Mm,
So if I could say in Indonesia, maybe someone who want to try to speak in English, mereka tuh bakal dibilang kayak sok Inggris. How to say sok Inggris in English? Trying
I
too hard to sound Western, something like that.
okay. Okay.
Think that
Okay, I understand. Okay, for the next question, what is your opinion about English overpowering your native language?
overpowering. Well, for me, in my opinion, and when I saw how English in Indonesia, I think it's not that overpowering. You know what I mean? I mean, we still use our native here, because for Indonesian, like mainly Indonesian have two native language. So we use Indonesian and the other language. So I think English is not that overpowering for my native, but
Mm,
maybe sometimes like someone who can speak English. I mean, we have kind of people or kind of person who can speak English fluently more than Indonesian one. You get it? Maybe
Yeah.
they can, you know, they can maintain their speaking level, their language level, or something like that. But for me and for me, whenever I live with my friends, we still use Indonesia and our native language more than English. So I think it's not that overpowering.
Oh, I get it. Okay. So for the next question, how do people in your country call these words? Like for example, UK people would pronounce would say biscuit for cookie or crisps for chips, or sometimes they mention flat as for apartment, jam as a jelly, and so on. How do Indonesian people call these words?
Um, I think we don't have any kind of word, any specific word for that. We just use the English word, but pronounce it with our accent like that.
Uh,
Like for example, biscuit, maybe we call it as biscuit. Like really, really Indonesian accent one, like biscuit, not biscuit.
uh,
And also, but we have something like, like the pickup car,
pickup
pickup
car.
car.
I'm not too
I
familiar
think,
with that.
wait, should I search it for you? Wait.
Pickup cards.
Like the car who had,
Oh,
like
pickup
the car
car.
who,
Oh, okay, I get it, I get it.
yeah,
Okay, I know.
that car in Indonesia we call it as pickup, not pick up. With
Oh, pickup, like that.
yeah, pickup or
Oh,
pickup.
pickup. Okay. So it's like just
And
using same words but different pronunciation, like that.
yes, that's
Oh,
right.
okay. Okay, yeah, now I know. Um, okay, so move on for the next question. This is the second last question. How does the English vocabulary in your country differ from the origin country of native English speakers, which is from the UK?
Is it not the same question? Like,
Oh, I'm sorry. Should I repeat that again in like simple
no,
terms?
I'm just wondering the answer.
Okay.
The English vocabulary. Maybe I could say this one is for the loan words in Indonesia, I think.
Mm,
Like what I said before, like the pickup truck, we we call it here as pickup mobile, and I think there's no difference in Indonesia compared to the native speakers.
oh,
Wait, I still wondering your question.
it's okay.
Can you give me like the example?
For example, if in Malaysia, our English differ from the native speakers, like we use a lot of lah at the end, even if we speak English, like let's go eat lah, like that. It's like there's different in grammar.
I think we don't have the thing like that because
Oh,
in daily life we barely use English. I think
oh,
I can use English, but I use like the the English with the English grammar.
oh. Okay, now I understand. Like you rarely use English, so there's not a lot of differ, right? You just use the formal one.
Yes, I think that's right. There's
Oh,
no any specific vocabulary difference from the native English one.
mm, okay. Shall we move on to
Ah,
the last? Oh, okay.
maybe I can give you one example from that question.
Oh,
So
okay.
you asked me about the vocabulary, right? Okay,
Yes.
so I just found one. In Indonesia here,
Hmm.
when you say ketchup,
Ketchup.
ketchup, it means like the sweet soy sauce in here.
Oh. Oh
But
yeah.
when you say sauce,
So.
it's mean like the tomato sauce or the chili sauce. It's kind of
Oh.
different.
Oh yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's something new I learned.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
thought you know that.
I don't really. Okay.
How about
Sh-
in Malaysia?
In Malaysia, we also like the sweet soy sauce. We call it as kicap also, but it's a Malay word. Kicap is a Malay
Ah.
word. And for ketchup, we still refer to like the tomato sauce or chili sauce. Yeah.
Oh, so you still say ketchup for the chili
Sauce.
sauce
Yes.
or tomato sauce?
Yeah.
Ah, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Shall we move on to the last question?
Sure.
Okay. For the last question, what are some unique English words or phrases commonly used in your country?
Okay, I can give you some example for this. For the first one, we mainly use, healing,
Healing.
healing.
Oh yeah. I know, I know.
Healing is actually for people who sick and then they need a time to heal themselves. But in Indonesia here, we use healing to refer something like a vacation or holiday or break time for our work, for the work, for the job. And
Oh.
also flexing. It is a
Flex.
slang word or not?
Flexing is like to show off things, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Ah, in Malaysia we use the term too,
Ah,
flexing. Same goes with
what's
healing. We also use it to refer as like going on vacation or what. Oh,
what's
that's
I think Indonesian also use gas. Is that an English word or not? I don't know.
I feel like gas in Indonesia is like faster, right? Like being faster. Let's go. Something like that. Is it?
Yeah, sometimes it can be like that, but actually gas it's more like let's go,
Ah,
go
wow.
go
Okay.
for it.
That's the unique English words. Yeah. Are there any examples or it's that's all?
How about bestie? I
What,
think
sir?
bestie,
Basti.
bestie. Yeah. Did did the native speaker use that? I don't know, but bestie is came from best friend, and you just put like the put
Just combine it together, shortening
together.
it
Yeah,
Basti. Yeah. I think a lot of like the native speaker also use the word Basti, but yeah, Malaysia also use Basti. We share a lot of similarities actually.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is all for our interview. Thank you so much for joining me today and thank you for cooperating. I hope you have a great day and bye. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and hi, my name is Nur Qaisara Iman binti Syahrizal and I am from DEC 5D. So today I will be presenting about the interview analysis that I have done for expanding country, which I choose Indonesia. So reason for why I am choosing this interviewee, I want to know how English spread and used in Indonesia. Moving on to my interviewee background. Her name is Iswara Aulia Widyasari. Her age is 23, nationality is Indonesian, And current status, she is working as a private tutor and her language and she speaks Bahasa Indonesia and also English. For the first question, how did English first come to your country? So, based on my interviewee's answer, she said that English first come to their country based on three things, which is colonization and early contact, post-World War II influence, and also current use. My analysis is that for the colonization and early contact, even though Indonesia was colonized by the Dutch, English was primarily used for trade and missionary work. This suggests that English already had an early presence in Indonesia, but it wasn't the main language of governments or daily life. English would have been introduced by foreign traders, missionaries, and perhaps through colonial powers interaction. And for post-World War II influence, the rise of British and American influence after World War II is crucial. Following World War II, both the UK and the US were global superpowers with significant economic and cultural influence. So, this would have affected Indonesia, especially in terms of trade, media, and also education. And at this point, English would have gained more prominence due to the influence of globalization institutions and also the increasing importance of English. And the last point is about the current use. The fact that English is widely used in education, business, and globalization points to how Indonesia has integrated English into their modern life, particularly in higher education, international relations, and also the economy. Okay, so moving on for the second question number 2. How did English develop over time in your country and how is it now? So, based on my interviewee's answer, she said that firstly, English has gradually become more integrated into Indonesian society, moving from a specialized language which is used in formal education and business to one that permeates everyday life. This reflects a global trend where English as the language of international communication gradually become more embedded in various sectors and social spheres. Next thing is, my interviewer said that English play a role in formal education and business. Initially, English was primarily used in formal education and business settings. This highlight the role of English as a tool for access to knowledge, career opportunities, and also global markets. Over time, as the demand for English proficiency increased, it became a crucial part of the educational system, especially for students aiming to pursue higher education abroad or seeking employment in multinational companies. And the third point is about influence of the internet and social media. So, as the rise of the internet and social media also played a significant role in the spread of English. Platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, which are also dominated by English content, have contributed to the normalization of English in daily conversation. And last but not least is about English used in international school. In Indonesia, the use of English as a medium of instruction in international schools demonstrate how English has become a status symbol and a necessity for higher quality education in some segments of Indonesian society. Parents who wish to provide their children with a competitive edge may seek out these schools to ensure their children are proficient in English, further perpetuating its influence. Okay, so for the third question, what is your reaction to the presence of English in your country? Do you see it as a positive or negative influence? So, my interviewee sees English as a positive force, particularly because it opens up opportunities for Indonesian to work in international fields such as business and education. This is a crucial benefit of learning English in a globalized world where proficiency can provide access to better job prospects. But there's a negative side on how English has expanded in Indonesia where it creates the cultural tension. The negative aspect discussed involve the local reaction when people try to use English in daily life. The interviewee highlights how some Indonesians might be mocked or labeled as trying too hard to be Western when they speak English in casual settings. So, this reflects a cultural tension between global influence and national identity. And the next thing is about social pressure and identity. The idea that speaking English can lead to accusation of trying to become Western points to the sensitivity around maintaining a national identity. Some Indonesians may feel uncomfortable with the widespread use of English, viewing it as a form of cultural erosion or a challenge to local language and customs. For question number 4, what is your opinion about English overpowering your native language? So, my interviewee said that English is not overpowering. My interviewee believed that English has not overpowered Indonesian culture and language. This indicates that despite English is becoming increasingly important in formal settings, it still hasn't fully replaced Bahasa Indonesia or regional language in daily life. This suggests a strong resilience of local language and cultures despite the global spread of English. The continued use of native language means that the fact that people continue to use Bahasa Indonesia as well as regional languages like Javanese or Sundanese for daily communication highlights the importance of linguistic diversity in Indonesia, which lead to English not overpowering their cultures. And the next thing is about English as a functional tool, where English has primarily used for communication with foreigner and formal context. But it used when necessary, particularly in international or formal contexts, but it still doesn't dominate day-to-day conversation between Indonesians. So, for question number 5, how do people in your country call these words? For example, UK people would call biscuit as cookie, crisp as chips, flat as apartment, jam as jelly, and lorry as truck. So, my interviewee said that the Indonesians use these same English word but pronounce them with a very thick Indonesian accent and also have different spelling. This is very common in many non-native English-speaking countries where English words are adapted to fit the sound system of the local language. For example, in Indonesia, the word biscuit is pronounced and spelled the same, biscuit, but it's pronounced as biscuit, reflecting the way Indonesian phonetics shape the sound. The next thing is about the Indonesianized English words, which is which are modified for easier pronunciation. For example, pick up car. In Indonesian, they simplified it to become a pickup car, which is a whole new vocabulary. And the next thing is about the language evolution and adaptation. This is where the English word blends with the local speech pattern. So, for the next question, question number 6. How does the English vocabulary in your country differ from the origin country of native English speaker, which is UK? And my interviewee said that Indonesian English really follows UK English, especially in formal settings like education and business. The interviewee states that there isn't much difference between Indonesian English and UK English, mainly because English is used in formal settings in Indonesia, and people typically follow the same usage as UK English. This suggests that formal English education in Indonesia is influenced by British English, which is the common model in many former British colonies. As a result, everyday English vocabulary and structures in Indonesia tend to align with UK standards. And the next thing is English is used for like the formality only. English is not commonly spoken in daily life, so keeping its structure close to UK standard. Since English is in Indonesia, it's often reserved for formal situations. It doesn't undergo the same level of adaptation as in countries where English is spoken more casually in their daily life. This reflects how English in Indonesia is still viewed as a formal, or business language rather than a everyday spoken language, which keeps the usage closer to the original UK form. And the third point in this question is about the unique word meaning, where um, the interviewee states about she gave an example of ketchup, which in Indonesia refers to the sweet soy sauce, which an Indonesian word is ketchup, rather than the tomato or chili sauce, commonly associated with the word in many English speaking countries. This shows how local language influences the meaning of borrowed word. Ketchup in Indonesia is a direct borrowing from the Dutch word ketchup, which originally referred to a fermented sauce and over time has evolved to mean sweet soy sauce ketchup. Meanwhile, sauce is used to describe chili or tomato sauce, aligning with the more common English usage. This illustrates how the meaning of borrowed word can shift when they are adapted into a different cultural context. And for the last question, which is question 7, what are some unique English words or phrases commonly used in your country? So there are three examples given by my interviewee, which is first, healing. In Indonesia, the word healing is used differently from its traditional meaning of recovering from illness. Here in Indonesia, it refers to taking a break or going on vacation, typically to recover from stress or exhaustion, especially from work. This reflects how English words are often recontextualized and adapted to fit local cultural practices. The next word is flexing. The word flexing in English means to show off one's muscles, but in Indonesia it has evolved to meaning to show off any kind of material possession or accomplishment. It often used in a more general sense to describe someone flaunting wealth, success, or personal achievement. And the next example is gas. The word gas in English refers to fuel or gas stations, but in Indonesia, it even pronounced differently, which is pronounced as gas, and it's used as a slang term for let's go or hurry up. This shows how English words can become part of everyday conversation with entirely new meaning in local contexts. The word gas likely comes from the energy and speed associated with gas as fuel, making it a catchy and motivational phrases used to encourage action and movement. Okay, so next is about the spread of English language. There are three main points which role of English in education, English in business and professional settings, and influence of media and technology. For role of English in education, English is a key part of formal education taught from elementary school to university. Many universities offer programs in English, especially in fields like business, engineering, and science. And English proficiency in Indonesia is often seen as a requirement for career advancement in both local and international companies. And the next point is English in business and professional setting is where English is commonly used in business, especially for communication with foreign companies or international partners. Many multinational companies operating in Indonesia require employees to have a good command of English. And the last thing is how English is influenced by media and technology. The spread of global media, including movies, TV show, music, and social media, has increased exposure to English. Digital platforms like I mentioned just now, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok often feature content in English, influencing the younger generation to learn about English more. And next thing is English as lingua franca. So, English serves as a bridge language between Indonesia's many regional languages. It is commonly used in tourist destinations, international businesses, and when communicating with foreigners. While not everyone is fluent, basic English serves as a practical means of communication for many Indonesians.
All right. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining the call. I really appreciate your time. Before we start, would you like to introduce yourself a little?
Hi, Khaleesa. Nice to meet you. I am Michelle. I've been working here in Malaysia for like 1 year and 3 months already. So I'm
Oh,
working as a senior test engineer working in Paynet.
okay. So for the first question that I'm going to interview you, how did English first come to your country?
Okay. So there's a lot of countries that colonized the Philippines before, but one of it is the English language first came to our country when the Americans colonized Philippines in around 1898 and
Mhm.
introduced their language. Yeah.
Okay, it's very nice.
Yeah.
So for the second question, how did English develop over time in your country and how is it now?
Okay. It developed when Americans sent teachers to teach Filipinos in school and then adapt their curriculum in Philippine educational system. It developed over time and soon Filipinos learned the language easily and became our second language.
Okay, so because of that, what is your reaction to the presence of English in your country? Do you see it as a positive or negative influence?
Okay. Filipinas families introduce English to their children even before they go to school. So I remember when I'm still young, around uh uh, I'm still not yet in school, but then I
Mm-hmm.
always remember my mom like talking to me in English. So like
Mm-hmm.
I can basically adapt to it easily and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't see any reason to react negatively to the language presence in our country because it made us a better speaker and then communicator in most part of the world.
Okay, that's really nice. So, for the next question, how do people in your country call these words? Like, for example, in the UK, people would pronounce biscuit as cookie and crisp as chips,
Mm.
flat as apartment, jam as jelly, and lastly, lorry as truck. What about your the Filipinos English?
Oh, for Filipinos, words vary accordingly to the interpretation of different countries.
Mhm. Yeah.
For example, the term for a flat in America
Mhm.
English is an apartment, right?
Yeah.
In British English is the term for an apartment is flat. In Australia English,
Mhm.
the term for an apartment is unit.
Yeah.
Actually, in the Philippines, we
Yeah.
can adapt all. It's just, for
Mm.
example, we used often an apartment, but if
Mm.
you say like a flat or a unit,
Mhm.
we can easily understand.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how does the English vocabulary in your country differ from the origin country of native English speakers, like, for example, the UK?
Mm-hmm. English vocabulary in our country differ from the originative speaker British in pronunciation,
Mhm.
spelling, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. We have also like a different cultural association for that. So, uh, yeah, over time, I think it changes now, especially now, since before I can say confidently that we are like the British, like
Mm,
how do I
yeah.
say it? Like my grandparent, like I remember my grandpa is like telling me story about he can actually converse
Mm,
fluently in a British setting in UK. But
wow.
now, yeah, but now in our generation, right?
Mm,
I don't think we're that good in conversing anymore. Like
uh,
we're not that maybe the accent, the British
yeah,
accent.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
understand.
yeah. Mm.
Okay. So for the last question, what are some unique English words or phrases commonly used in your country?
Commonly used. Um, it's very just a simple word like
Yeah.
a boy, right? For example, between friends,
Yeah.
sometimes we just call like, "Hey boy, let's go there," something like that. Or if
Oh,
it's a girl, it's like, "Hey girl, come here," something like that.
oh.
Yeah, so it's just a small phrases usually. So
I
yeah.
understand. Okay. It's really nice. Okay. So that will be the end of the interview questions. So thank you so much, Michelle, for helping and giving your thoughts about the English in your country and helping me do my research. I really, really appreciate it. Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Khaleesa. Good
you.
luck on your research and
Thank you.
congratulations in advance.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Hi, my name is Khaleesa, and in this video, I will be analyzing the responses from my interview with Michelle, who is from the Philippines. The interview focused on the role of English in the Philippines, how it developed over time, and the lexical differences compared to other English varieties. Let's go through the analysis question by question. Okay, so for the first question, how did English first come to your country? Michelle mentioned that English was introduced to the Philippines when the Americans colonized the country in 1898. This is historically accurate as the US implemented English as the medium of instruction in schools. This shows that Philippine English has strong American roots, unlike countries like Malaysia, where British English had more influence due to colonization by the British. For the second question, how did English develop in your country and how is it now? According to Michelle, English became widely used in the Philippines when American teachers were sent to teach Filipinos. Over time, Filipinos adapted to the language and it became their second language. She also mentioned that Filipino families introduced English to children at a young age, even before school. This suggests that English in the Philippines is not just learned formally through education, but also informally through family and daily conversations. For the third question, what is your reaction to the presence of English in your country? Do you see it as a positive or negative influence? Michelle has a positive view of English in the Philippines. She believes it has helped Filipinos become better speakers and communicators, especially on an international level. Unlike in some countries where English is sometimes seen as a threat to local languages, English in the Philippines is widely accepted and even encouraged from a young age. Moving on to the next question, which is question number 4. How do people in your country call these words? Michelle explained that in the Philippines, people are adaptable when it comes to vocabulary. For example, in American English, apartment is used, while in British English, the word flat is common. In Australian English, unit is used. She mentioned that Filipinos can understand and use all these terms, showing that Philippine English is flexible and influenced by different English varieties. For question number 5, how does the English vocabulary in your country differ from the origin country of native English speakers, for example, the UK? Michelle stated that Philippine English differs from British English in pronunciation, spelling, grammar, and vocabulary. Interestingly, she shared that her grandfather used to speak more fluently in a British style, but today's generation is more influenced by American English. This shows that over time, the dominant influence on Philippine English has shifted from British to American. For the last question, what are some unique English words or phrases commonly used in your country? Michelle gave examples of how Filipinos use English informally, such as saying, "Hey boy, let's go," or "Hey girl, come here." These expressions show how English is naturally blended into casual Filipino conversations. This highlights how Philippine English has developed its own unique style, influenced by both local culture and global English varieties. The Philippines is an example of the second diaspora where English spread due to historical colonization and globalization. The country was heavily influenced by American rule, which established English as the primary language for education, government, and business. Today, English serves as a lingua franca in the Philippines, allowing Filipinos to connect internationally for job opportunities, trade, and education. It plays a key role in industries like customer service, outsourcing, and international relations, making the Philippines highly competitive in the global economy. However, while the globalization of English benefits Filipinos, it also raises important concerns about cultural identity. The dominance of English sometimes overshadows native languages, creating a challenge in maintaining local linguistic heritage. Finding a balance between English proficiency and preserving native languages remains a significant discussion in the country. That concludes my analysis of the interview. Thank you for watching.
Hi, my name is Alyaa Binti Othman, and my interviewee is from outer country, which is Singapore English. Before I start with question analysis, let me introduce my interview's background. His name is Hong Kiat. He is 38 years old, and he is from Bedok, Singapore. And currently, he's working as a civil servant. The reason why I choose this country is because Singapore is a multilingual country with strong English usage. English also introduced during British colonization, and their main language for education, business, and governance is English. And Singlish has developed with local influences. Also, they united with different ethnic groups by English language, which shows how English language also evolves in a diverse society. Let's start with the first question. How did English first come to Singapore? So English was introduced to Singapore when the British arrived. It is believed that Stamford Raffles, who played a key role in Singapore's history, brought the language with him. When the British established their rule, English started to spread, especially in administration and trade. It became an important language for communication between different communities. Over time, English was used in schools, government, and business. This is familiar to what happened in Malaysia, where English also became widely spoken due to British influence. Today, English is one of Singapore's official languages and is commonly used in education, work, and daily life. It plays a major role in connecting people of different backgrounds in the country.
I don't know exactly how English first came to Singapore, but I believe it would be sometime around when probably 1980s, where Sir Stamford Raffles founded Singapore. He probably brought the language into Singapore at that time. That's my guess, but yeah.
Okay, you mean like from the colonized, British colonized? You mean?
That's right. Because the British came to Singapore around the 1980s, and they founded Singapore at that time. So I believe that's when they brought the language into Singapore.
Okay, I understand because we have similar history with the Singaporean.
That's right.
Yeah.
I believe it would be similar for Malaysia as well, when English came into Malaysia.
Yeah.
Moving on with the next question, how did English develop over time in your country and how is it now? So the interviewers replied, Singapore is a multiracial society with Chinese, Malays, Indians, and other minority groups. Over time, English became the common language to bridge communication between different races. Today, it is the official business language and is widely used in schools, workplaces, and daily life. All subjects in schools are taught in English, making it the primary language of education and work. Because of its widespread use, many Singaporeans now consider English their first language.
So in Singapore, we are a multiracial society. So we have the Chinese, the Malay, the Indians, and some from the minority races. So English has been our a common working language for Singapore, in that every one of us in Singapore learn English, and it's the official business language that we use in school as well as at work. So that's how it currently is in Singapore.
Oh, okay. It's like it's become your first English, or first like language, or like just a second language.
So in a way, it's like our first language, I would say, because all the subjects in school are taught in English, as well as at work. The usual language of communication is also English because that's the common language across the different races in Singapore. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Next question, what is your reaction to the presence of English in your country? Do you see it as a positive or negative influence? From the interviewer's answer, English helps people from different racial groups in Singapore communication, creating unity and understanding. It serves as a common language for everyone, regardless of their ethnic background. Since English is widely spoken worldwide, it is practical and useful for travel, making international interactions easier. Its convenience benefits daily life in Singapore, from education to business and social interactions. Overall, English has a positive impact, enhancing communication and accessibility both locally and globally.
It's positive because it allows us to communicate with each other in Singapore across different races. So whether it's Chinese, Malay, or Indians, I think we all speak this common language, which allow us to communicate with one another. It's also a very practical language that we use for when we travel to overseas, because many countries speak English, except for a few, but quite a lot of countries speak English. So it's a very convenient language for both in Singapore as well as for overseas travels.
Next, how do people in your country call these words? For example, UK people would pronounce biscuit as cookie, crisps as chips, flat as apartment, jam as jelly, lorry as truck. In Singapore, some English words are used interchangeably due to country's multicultural background and exposure to both British and American English. For example, biscuit and cookie mean the same thing to most Singaporeans. Some might call crunchy snacks biscuits and softer one cookies, but there is no strict rule. Both terms are widely understood and used. Similarly, flat and apartment can be used interchangeably, but flat is more common when referring to public housing, especially HDB flats. Apartment is usually associated with private housing or condominiums, but people understand both terms. This flexibility in language use shows how Singaporeans adapt to different English variations, making communication smooth and natural in daily life.
I think biscuits and cookies are used interchangeably, so we don't have a particular preferred terminology for it. So some people call it a biscuit, some people call it a cookie. I think it's a bit interchangeable.
Oh, okay. So it's like both can be used in Singaporean.
That's right. That's right.
How about a flat? Like, do you guys call it flat or apartment?
Similarly, I think it's quite interchangeable because they refer to the same thing, so we use it interchangeably. But I think for us in Singapore, we have the public housing, which is the Housing Development Board flats. So in that context, we call it a flat. But I think it's actually quite interchangeable.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. It means like it's the same thing. It's either like either like apartment or flat. It's everyone can understand.
That's right.
Moving on with the next question, how does the English vocabulary in your country differ from the UK? So, English in Singapore has evolved into its own unique variety, often referred to as Singlish. Due to Singapore's multiracial society, different languages such as Malay, Chinese, dialects, and Tamil have influenced the way English is spoken. One major difference is the addition of local slang and expressions. Words like lah, law, and le are commonly used at the end of sentences to add emphasis or tone. For example, instead of saying "Where are you going?", a Singaporean might say "Where are you going, le?"
these words don't change the meaning of the sentence but add a local flavor. Another unique feature is the mixing of words from different languages. Terms like kiasu from Hokkien meaning afraid to lose out and rojak, a Malay word meaning mixed, are commonly used in daily conversation. While the sentence structure may not always follow standard English grammar, it is still understandable among locals. Unlike British English, which follows strict grammar and vocabulary rules, Singlish is more informal, expressive, and influenced by Singapore's cultural diversity. While locals and even Malaysians can easily understand it, native English speakers from Western countries may find it unfamiliar.
Because Singapore is like a multiracial society, I think English in Singapore has evolved over time to like have this thing like Singlish. So you might be familiar with it in Malaysia also, that we mix in some of the other communities' languages into English, and it becomes like a bit of a slang or a local dialect of sorts. So there is a bit of that, like with like mixture. So it's not Queen's English the way England or the UK would have it, but it has some of the local types of words or vocabulary in it.
Can you give me like example, like how, like for a sentence, maybe like to show the slang in English language?
Oh, so sometimes we end off a sentence with like la, like or law or something like that. So it's like where are you going, where are you going, like it's just additional like words, but I think it doesn't make the sentence very unrecognizable to non-Singaporeans as well, because at least in Malaysia, I think you also recognize like what we are trying to say. I'm not sure if like in the Western countries recognize it as much, but it's a bit of mixing in of the different dialects into the language.
It's like to express the expression, I think.
Yeah,
like it's what makes unique.
Like we might say if someone is very kiasu or
what is kiasu?
Something kiasu.
What is
kiasu? Like scared to lose out.
Oh, okay. It's a new word for me. I never heard before.
So it's not English, but because we just mix it together, it's a bit of a rojak.
Okay. I
English
think
is a bit of a rojak language.
I believe that word is originally from Chinese or Mandarin, I guess.
It's probably from a dialect. Yeah, Chinese dialect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But sometimes we also mix in like Malay words, like or the sentence structure may not be the perfect grammar, but it's understandable within like the local community.
For the last question, what are some unique English words or phrases commonly used in your country? In Singapore, words like lah, lor, or leh are commonly used in daily conversations, adding a unique touch to the way people speak. These expressions come from Malay and Chinese dialects and are mostly used in casual settings, especially among friends. While they do not change the meaning of a sentence, they help convey tone and emotion, making speech more expressive and natural. This distinct style of communication reflects Singapore's multicultural influence and the way English has evolved to suit the local context.
I don't really have an answer to that, sorry.
Okay, maybe like, I don't know, but mostly on the internet I saw like every time I watch like Singaporean commonly use like the words can, like can, like have different meaning for can, like for can laugh, for can law. I think is it like common words to say?
I think what happens is some of us like to end out the sentence with like a la or a law, or it's just a sort of a slang of sorts. for more like informal type of context lah, like between friends or in informal type of settings.
To justify the spread of the English language in Singapore, the spread of the English language in Singapore began with British colonization, introduced mainly by Stamford Raffles. As the British established their rule, English became the primary language for administration, trade, and governance. Over time, its usage expanded into schools, government, and business, making it an essential tool for communication. In a multiracial society like Singapore, English played a crucial role in bridging communication gaps between different ethnic groups. Today, it is the main language used in education, workplaces, and daily life, with many Singaporeans considering it their first-time language. While English originated from British influence, it has evolved into a localized form known as Singlish, which incorporates elements from Malay, Chinese dialects, and Tamil, reflecting Singapore's diverse cultural backgrounds. Other than that, English also functions as a lingua franca in Singapore. By uniting people from different racial and linguistic backgrounds, it is used as the primary language in schools, ensuring that all students can communicate effectively, regardless of their mother tongue in professional settings. English dominates as the language of business, making it essential for career advancement and economic success. Its widespread use also benefits Singaporeans in international communication, travel, and trade. Although Singlish has developed as a unique form of English in Singapore, it remains understandable within the region. Singaporeans can easily adapt the English usage, switching between British English, American English, and Singlish based on the context, further reinforcing its role as a global lingua franca.